Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're going to be taking a look at three notorious American gangs.
Okay.
The Aryan Brotherhood, the Hells Angels, and the Bloods.
Wow.
You provided some fascinating YouTube documentaries about these groups.
Right.
And we want to try to understand how they operate both within and outside the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be diving deep into their histories, their codes, their rivalries, and trust me, it's about to get really interesting.
Yeah, they're I think you'll be surprised at just how organized these gangs are and the strategies they use to control really their environments.
Yeah.
Whether it's inside prison or even like out on the open road.
Right.
You know, they have to create these systems of control and communication to thrive, and it's quite fascinating.
Okay, so let's unpack this, and let's start with the Aryan Brotherhood, or the AB.
Okay.
These guys are chillin'.
Yeah.
You see their origins in the California prison system way back in the 1960s.
Right.
A time of, huge racial tension.
Of course, yeah.
And it's clear that those tensions fueled their rise.
Yeah, I mean, the AB emerged, as a way for white inmates to protect themselves.
Right.
That their methods quickly became incredibly brutal.
Yeah.
And they really understood that violence could be used strategically to control that environment.
Yeah, it wasn't just like random violence. It was calculated.
No, absolutely.
There was a quote in one of the documentaries from a former member who said that they operated on the idea of, you do it in such a way where it's so vicious that everybody, even in a violent environment, takes notice.
Yeah.
So like they wanted to dominate through fear.
Exactly. Violence was a tool for them to establish themselves as really the most ruthless gang in the system.
Right.
And it worked.
It worked, and it spread their influence, too.
Absolutely.
And, authorities tried to contain them by transferring AB leaders to federal prisons in the 1970s, but it kind of backfired.
Yeah, it really did.
It's unbelievable how they maintained control, even in solitary confinement. Like, they were using toilets and vents to communicate with each other.
Yeah, they were masters of adaptation.
They really were.
And they developed these sophisticated communication methods.
Yeah.
Like invisible ink.
Oh, wow.
Or coded messages, even based on like Sir Francis Bacon's writings.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they had these female associates they called mules, who would smuggle things in and out of the prisons for them.
So we're talking like messages, drugs, weapons.
Oh, all of that, yeah.
It shows how far their reach extended beyond the prison walls.
Exactly.
But like any organization, that's built on violence and paranoia, they eventually started to crumble from within.
Yeah, infighting and power struggles really weaken them over time.
Right.
And informants seeking revenge or a way out,
yeah,
help the government build a case against them.
Yeah, and it's tragic because within all that darkness, you find these stories of AB members who completely turn their lives around after prison.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
It is.
Like Rick Flinger. He became a successful writer and teacher.
Right.
And even Eddie Bunker.
Eddie Bunker.
Yeah, he had a second act as a Hollywood actor.
Wow.
And screenwriter.
Wow.
He even appeared in Reservoir Dogs.
It's unbelievable. It makes you think about all that wasted potential.
It does, and it raises questions about, the nature of prison itself.
Right.
Does it rehabilitate, or does it just make individuals harder and more likely to reoffend when they get out?
Yeah, those are questions worth considering.
For sure.
Now let's shift gears a little bit to a rivalry that makes the AB's internal struggles look tame.
All right.
The Hells Angels and the Mongols.
Oh, yeah.
This war's been going on for decades.
And
it's all about control of California.
It is.
These gangs, they really hate each other.
Yeah. The intensity of this rivalry is off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got these two groups that are both really rooted in California biker culture.
Right.
But they've been locked in this deadly battle for dominance for over 3 decades.
And San Francisco is like a major flashpoint.
Big time.
Because it's traditionally Hells Angels territory.
Right.
So when the Mongols arrived, it was a huge slap in the face to the ancient.
Yeah, it was an invasion.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a rivalry. It was a direct challenge to their authority.
And the stakes are so high.
Incredibly high.
It's not just turf or business.
No.
It's pride and reputation.
Absolutely.
And this like primal urge to defend what they see as their rightful territory.
Right.
And the violence is brutal.
Oh, it is absolutely brutal.
They're not messing around.
No.
Like, they will attack each other anytime, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And collateral damage is almost expected.
It is.
They operate with this shoot-to-kill mentality.
It's a chilling example of how gang warfare can just spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And it becomes this self-perpetuating cycle of violence and revenge.
And perfect example of this is the 2008 murder of Mark Papagordato, the president of the Hells Angels San Francisco chapter.
Yeah, it was a senseless act of violence.
Yeah, it started with a seemingly minor incident at a bar in the Mission District.
Right. It highlights how quickly a simple disagreement can escalate into a deadly confrontation in this world.
Yeah, so this Mongol walks into a bar in the heart of Hells Angels territory.
Right.
That alone was a provocation.
It was.
And there's some kind of altercation with Papa. They go outside, maybe a scuffle. And then, bam, the Mongol stabs Papa, shoots him, and escapes on his motorcycle.
And for the Hells Angels, that wasn't just murder.
Right.
That was an act of war.
Right.
They had to retaliate.
Yeah.
And send a very clear message to the Mongols.
Right.
That they would pay.
And Papa wasn't just any angel.
No, he wasn't.
He was a legend.
He was.
Known for his brutality and enforcing the club's rules with an iron fist.
Absolutely.
His death sent shockwaves through the San Francisco underworld.
It did. It was a stark reminder of the stakes involved in this war. That no one, not even someone as powerful as Papa, was safe.
So to really grasp this rivalry, we need to rewind a little bit and look at their origins. And it's fascinating because, both the Hells Angels and the Mongols started in California with a shared passion for, motorcycles and the open road.
It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
That these groups that are now locked in this deadly battle were initially drawn together by a love for riding.
Right.
It shows how camaraderie and brotherhood can twist into animosity and violence.
The Hells Angels were first founded in 1948 in San Bernardino, with their San Francisco chapter forming a few years later.
Okay.
And they quickly built a reputation as the biggest, baddest biker gang around.
Yeah, their reputation wasn't just about motorcycles, though.
Right.
It was also their willingness to engage in violence and criminal activity.
Right.
They really cultivated this outlaw image.
Right.
Living by their own rules outside of mainstream society.
Then the Mongols came a little bit later, forming in 1969 in Montebello.
Right.
They took their name from Genghis Khan's warriors.
Oh.
And were mostly ex-veterans seeking, that brotherhood that they had found in the military. But as they expanded their territory and their activities, which often involved, the drug trade, they inevitably bumped heads with the Hells Angels.
Of course.
And the Angels saw them as encroaching on their turf.
Absolutely.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The Mongols, wanting to assert their presence, did something that was a huge sign of disrespect to the Hells Angels.
Oh.
They added California to their bottom rocker.
What?
That patch on their vests that signifies territory.
Oh, wow.
That was a direct challenge.
Right.
The Hells Angels had long claimed California as their own. It was a symbolic declaration of war.
Wow.
A way of saying, we're here and we're not backing down.
Bold move.
The Angels demanded that they remove the patch, but the Mongols weren't intimidated.
No.
They held a vote within their club, and the answer was a resounding, no way!
Wow.
We're taking California.
They might have been outnumbered,
Right.
but they were definitely ready to fight.
Yeah. And that decision really marked a turning point.
Okay.
The rivalry escalated, and just a few months later, in September of 1977, two Mongols, Jingle Smith and Redbeard Morris, were riding back to San Diego with their girlfriends.
Oh, okay.
When they were ambushed and shot by Hells Angels.
Oh, wow.
Tragically, both Mongols were killed, and the women were seriously injured.
Oh, my God.
Even their funeral became a battleground.
What?
Someone sent a bouquet with the Hells Angels colors to the funeral home.
Wow.
And then the car used to deliver the flowers exploded, injuring 3 more Mongols.
That's insane.
That act was a calculated provocation designed to intimidate and inflict psychological damage.
Right.
It was a clear message that the Hells Angels were not afraid to strike.
Wow.
Even during moments of grief. And that event really pushed the Mongols over the edge.
Right.
One former member said, when Redbeard and Jingle got blown off their bikes, that started the war big time.
Wow.
There was no going back.
So the rivalry escalated into all-out war.
Yeah.
One that would continue for decades and leave a devastating trail of violence.
And this wasn't confined to California either.
No.
It spread across the country, with chapters of both gangs clashing in Nevada, Arizona, even as far east as New York.
Yeah, this was a nationwide conflict.
It's crazy to think that it's gone on for so long.
It is.
You'd think that they would try to make peace at some point.
You would think.
Well, there was actually a brief truce in the 1990s, brokered by Sonny Barger.
Wow.
The founder of the Hells Angels Oakland chapter.
Sonny Barger himself tried to make peace.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
It is.
It seems even the most hardened warriors can see the futility of endless conflict.
Right.
But the truce didn't last. In 2000, the Mongols established a chapter in San Jose, right in the heart of Hells Angels territory.
Talk about poking the bear.
Yeah, that was a huge blow to the truce.
Right.
The Hells Angels saw it as a direct challenge to their authority.
Right.
And a sign that the Mongols were not going to honor the agreement.
Right.
The war was back on, and it became even more violent.
One of the most infamous incidents was the 2002 Laughlin River Run riot in Nevada.
Oh, yeah.
It was supposed to be this big biker event, but it turned into a bloodbath.
It did.
Yeah.
Thousands of bikers were there.
Yeah.
Including Mongols and Hells Angels.
Yeah.
And the tension was palpable.
Right.
It was like a powder keg waiting to explode.
Roger Penny, a veteran Mongol, was at a casino bar.
Okay.
When a group of Hells Angels approached, you could cut the tension with a knife.
I bet.
Penny, with his years of experience in this war,
right,
knew trouble was brewing.
Yeah.
He tried to de-escalate the situation, but it was too late.
A brawl broke out.
Yeah.
And Penny was stabbed multiple times.
Yeah.
He barely escaped with his life.
Wow.
In the end, 3 people were killed.
Right.
1 Mongol and 2 Hells Angels.
And here's a detail that really stuck with me.
Okay.
Penny has 4 black hearts tattooed on his vest.
Wow.
In the Mongols, each heart represents a time he was wounded.
Okay.
In service to the club.
It's a stark reminder of the commitment these bikers have to their clubs.
Yeah.
They're willing to endure unimaginable pain and risk their lives for their brothers and for revenge.
Yeah, and then the Mongols made a move that changed the whole game.
Okay.
They started recruiting from a particularly ruthless Hispanic street gang.
Really?
The Serenos.
That alliance was a turning point.
It was.
Serenos were notorious for their violence.
Right.
And brought a whole new level of brutality to the Mongols.
Right.
It was a gamble that raised the stakes even higher.
It's like they were pouring gasoline on an already raging fire.
Yeah.
This war just kept escalating, fueled by hatred and vengeance.
Right.
One Mongol even said, "I will give my life for this club. If I can die so the club name can move on, I'll do that."
That statement really captures the level of devotion these bikers have.
Yeah.
Loyalty trumps everything.
Right.
Even self-preservation.
Right.
And despite law enforcement efforts, this rivalry is still going strong.
It's a grim reminder that some conflicts run so deep, fueled by so much hatred that they seem to have no end.
It's a tragic cycle of violence that destroys lives, families, and communities.
Now let's move to a completely different world.
Okay.
One born in the heart of South Central Los Angeles.
Right.
The Bloods. The Bloods emerged in the 1960s. And you're right, it wasn't about starting trouble.
Right.
It was a direct response to the growing power of the Crips in South Central.
Yeah.
They were outnumbered, so their survival really depended on solidarity.
It did.
Their motto, blood love. It wasn't just a saying, it was a strategy for unity and strength.
Absolutely.
Unlike the Crips, who had a lot of infighting,
right,
the Bloods were all about sticking together. And retaliation was a huge part of their code.
It was.
If one of their own was attacked, his homies were expected to take revenge.
Right.
There's this chilling story about a former Blood known as Mr. Calico, who was paralyzed in a Crip attack.
Yeah, and even from his wheelchair.
Yeah.
He knew that his fellow Bloods would retaliate.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how violence begets violence.
Right.
And how this cycle traps so many young people in gang life.
It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
You also see a connection between the Bloods and motorcycle culture.
Yeah.
But it's different from the Hells Angels.
Right.
The Bloods' rise coincided with the explosion of hip-hop in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
And figures like Suge Knight, who is deeply connected to the Bloods,
right,
really brought that gang culture into the mainstream.
He did. Suge Knight, co-founder of Death Row Records.
Right.
He really blurred those lines between the music industry and the criminal world.
Yeah.
And his influence really helped to glamorize gang life and spread the Bloods' imagery and culture.
And then there's Tupac Shakur, a hip-hop icon.
Of course.
Who had close ties to the Bloods. And those ties may have led to his unsolved murder in 1996.
It's a tragic reminder of how gang involvement, even for someone at the top, can have really devastating consequences.
The details surrounding his death are still murky.
Yeah, they are.
But it happened after a fight with a Crip at a casino in Las Vegas.
Right.
Hours later, Tupac and Suge Knight were in a drive-by shooting. Knight survived, but Tupac didn't.
It's a sad story.
And the retaliation was swift and brutal, with violence erupting in Compton, where the Bloods originated.
Right.
And speaking of Compton, that's where it all began for the Bloods.
Yeah.
The name actually came from a high school in Compton.
Right.
Where this group of kids, tired of being targeted by the Crips, decided to band together for protection.
It's amazing how a group of kids just trying to survive created a movement that would have such a lasting impact.
I know.
For better or worse.
They called themselves the Piru Street Boys, after a street in Compton. And it really speaks to the power of community.
It does.
Even when it's born out of, violence and necessity.
Yeah.
But as the Bloods grew, things started to shift.
Right.
The younger generation, those coming up in the 2000s and beyond, they seem to have less respect for the traditional hierarchy.
Yeah.
And the code of blood love that had held the gang together.
Yeah, it's like they were losing that sense of unity, that commitment to the original ideals.
Right.
And with that came more unpredictable and brutal violence.
It's like they were losing that sense of unity, that commitment to the original ideals.
And that made the Bloods even more dangerous.
Right.
It highlights how gangs are not static.
Right.
They evolve. And sometimes that evolution makes them more volatile.
But even within all of this, you find glimmers of hope.
Right.
Former Bloods like Stutterbox and even Mr. Calico, the one who was paralyzed, are now working to steer young people away from gang life.
Their work really shows that change is possible.
It does.
That even those deeply entrenched in gang culture can find redemption and make a positive impact.
It's truly inspiring.
It is.
So we've covered 3 incredibly complex and dangerous gangs.
We have.
You've seen how their histories, the thirst for power, even chance encounters can lead to unimaginable violence.
Absolutely.
But we also wanted to understand the appeal.
Right.
And that's something that really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's crucial to recognize that these gangs often provide a sense of belonging.
Right.
Purpose, even family to their members.
Right.
Many of whom come from really difficult backgrounds.
Yeah. These are often kids from broken homes facing poverty and limited opportunities.
Yeah. The system might feel stacked against them.
Right.
So they find community and a sense of purpose in these gangs.
Yeah.
Even if it's a destructive path.
It forces us to ask, are we as a society doing enough to address those root causes?
Right.
Are we providing young people with viable alternatives?
Right.
Genuine opportunities to thrive?
Those are tough questions.
They are.
But understanding why someone might join a gang is critical to finding solutions.
Absolutely.
We can't just condemn the violence.
Right.
We need to create a society where these kids feel supported.
Right.
And have a chance at a better future.
We need to offer them a different path. One that leads away from the darkness and toward hope.
Absolutely.
That's something we're thinking about.
It is.
We've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But I hope this deep dive gave you a better understanding of the complexities of gang life in America.
I think so.
Until next time.